Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Larry Jacobs. Welcome to Pre-K-12 Education Talk Radio. Let me shut off the music. One of our last shows of the year. I'm sorry to see 2024 go. 2025 will be here around the corner, okay? But we have a wonderful way. We're going to end it with two shows this week, this one being one of them, okay? And I've got a wonderful fourth grade teacher here for you today named Kristen Trevitt, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing Kristen's last name right. She's going to tell me she's a fourth grade teacher from Vienna Elementary School, Forsyth County, North Carolina, Winston-Salem area. We're going to talk about immersive learning, okay, supporting literacy and reading with ed tech, which is so important. Everybody knows what's going on, all the educators, with reading education. Okay, it seems like we made a boo-boo over the last, say, like 35 years. Okay, so we're trying to change that. And one of the things we have now that we didn't have then is ed tech. Okay, Kristen is learning to be an expert teacher, okay, in using ed tech for better reading skills and all that. And we're going to archive the show over at ace-ed.org. I'm Larry Jacobs, and with further ado, here is the one and only Kristen Trevitt, which I hope I'm pronouncing right. Kristen, how's your last name?
Hi. My husband's family pronounces it Trivet. It's Kristen Trivet, but
Trivet.
I
would have bet on Trivet. I would have bet on Trivet, but it's Trivet, like the thing you put a pot on when it's hot.
Yes,
trivet.
Absolutely, like the pot holder. Yes.
And it's beautifully spelled, by the way, Trivette. That's why, like Corvette. Okay, it's not a Corvette. It's a Corvette.
It's actually Trivitte, but everyone always spells it wrong also.
I have an E. I'm sorry. I'm going to fix that right now, okay?
Hey, it's okay. It's a common thing.
It's so great to meet you. How's the weather down there? I'm up here in Maine, and it's freezing rain and snow yesterday. What's going on with you guys in Winston-Salem?
We have the warm, foggy rain going on today, and it's just kind of that dreary thing today.
But it's going to get sunny, right? It's North Carolina. That's a good place.
Well, in North Carolina, we have, like, all seasons of weather pretty much every day. So it's highly possible. We'll see.
I have a friend who lives down there, and I think in Charlotte, or near Charlotte. I can't remember which town. And he sent me a picture of snow last week. Did you have snow last week?
We did. It was quite a surprise. It was maybe like a quarter of an inch. It was mostly ice, but it was white. It was white on top.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's funny when you say you have all four seasons. You have all four seasons down there, and I know you do. Okay, and
because,
it gets cold.
Yes.
Come to Maine. I want you to have a 1 year in Maine where you really see these dramatic changes, okay, in the weather. It's absolutely amazing, I got to tell you. And tell us now about your school. Tell us about Vienna Elementary School. How long have you been there? All that sort of stuff. What the school's like? Brag.
Yes, I am teaching at my Elena Elementary, which is a little rural school in a town called Pofftown, North Carolina.
Oh, wait, I got different information here. Is that Forsyth County?
It is, because it's part of the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools. Yes.
Oh, I thought you were right in Winston-Salem. Okay, go over that again. I'm sorry. I misintroduced you.
Yes.
Forgive me.
It's okay. The school I'm at currently is right outside of Winston-Salem. It's in a little town called Pofftown, North Carolina.
Okay.
We're part of the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools. We're one of the largest districts in North Carolina.
Yep.
My school it's an awesome place to be. It's a family. It's warm, supportive, and everyone here values what we're doing in education. We have an amazing PTA that goes above and beyond teachers. However, we are not a Title I school. So
all this is good.
That is something. Yes. So that is something, we have to be kind of mindful about maximizing the limited resources we have. It does mean my class sizes are larger. There's no cap in 4th and 5th grade. So I typically have around 30 students in each of my reading classes. So that definitely brings some challenges with it as well. But I've also taught in an urban school right in the city, Winston-Salem. It was a Title I magnet school. There was a pretty diverse population there, many English language learners. But one of the cool things about that experience is, and I know we're talking about literacy and reading, is I had the opportunity.
You're doing great.
Yeah. So one of the magnet programs there was we had some single gender opportunities for students to elect to be in a classroom, either all boys or all girls.
Oh, wow.
And my little 5'5" self went into a classroom of 24 all boy fourth graders. You know, various backgrounds, a whole lot of energy, and I learned probably more in those 2 years than I think I've ever learned in education. Boys and reading, I had to really think outside of the box, but it taught me a lot, because boys, you know, they typically struggle more with reading, especially by fourth grade. So
it's interesting you say that. There was an article yesterday I read, I think it was in the New York Times, that fewer and fewer boys are reading literature and fiction. Fewer and fewer boys. The people who read fiction, okay, and even nonfiction, are girls. Okay, and so the boys are, and also, and this was interesting. You'll know this the minute I say it. When you look at what authors are out there, the big time authors these days, the vast majority of the number one authors are female. Okay, so they write from a female point of view for females. Okay, which makes it less accessible, if I can say it that way, to boys. It's interesting you would bring that up today, because that is a struggle to get boys to read. Wow. What's going on out there?
You know, it is. Yeah. It is. And something else that's, you know, kind of interesting about me is I grew up a math person.
Wow.
Math was my language. I could do math with my eyes closed, you know, chemistry equations, all those things spoke to me. And, you know, growing up, I struggled in reading. And so probably, I know. And so here I am, you know, after 20 plus years of teaching in a classroom. I've taught 3rd, 6th, and 4th grade, but 4th grade has my heart. About 15 years ago, I had an administrator sit me down, and, you know, I was wanting to be in a team of 2, and I wanted to teach the math, and I was just so sure she was going to tell me to teach math because I was just this math person. And she sat me down, and she told me that, you know, you have a true gift for teaching reading. And you know, the further we got into that conversation, and, you know, it just changed everything for me. And it changed, you know, my path and the direction I went, because I really believe that since I struggled with reading when I was younger, it gave me an insight into how to deliver it, or, you know, yes. And so I have ever since then made it my mission to pull all kids into reading, boys, girls. And I can't tell you how many boys come into my room at the beginning of the year, and they're like, "Oh, I hate to read." Oh, and I always tell them, "Yep." And I always tell them by the end of the year, this is going to be your favorite class. And they, "No, Miss Trivett, no, there's no way. I don't want to read. I don't like to read." You know, but those same big tough guys that, like you said, the books just like the covers of the books, the titles, they don't really speak to them. But if you can get them into it, you know, in the right way and build their interest, they get hooked, and they get so invested in the plot of the story and, like, what's going on. And so it really is about choice, you know, and finding things that's going to speak to them. So that's just a little about me.
What do you think, Krista? Yeah, what do you think if they're not reading, if boys aren't reading? And when I was a kid, it was, I mean, I'm giving my age here, it was the Hardy Boys, it was Tom Swift Jr. There were books for boys, okay? That's not there anymore right now, okay? I mean, there are obviously out there, but they're not like it was many, many years ago when I was a kid, 25,000 years ago, okay? And what are the kids doing? Okay, because you got to tap into what they dig now to make them get into the reading. Okay, what are they doing instead of reading? Are they just watching on screen? Yeah, what do you find with a 4th grade kid?
So I actually have a 10-year-old son myself who is in 4th grade this year, and who unfortunately has to have his mom for a reading teacher. But you know, the common thing for the kids right now is the boys are really drawn to graphic novels. and I think it's more of just like
That's interesting.
a society thing. Like the boys think it's cool to read the graphic novels. He's like, Mom, look, it's a new graphic novel. And I'm like, that's great. Now let's try this. And it's, oh, Mom, I don't want to do that. It doesn't have the pictures and, all the things.
We're going to talk about this, but in this technological age we live in this very visual age we live in, okay, kids are on screen all the time. There's always something going on there. A graphic novel, and not that there's anything wrong with the graphic novel per se, but that's the easy way out, okay?
Yes.
But unfortunately, as kids get older, okay, they have to be able to read when they go into their businesses. They have to be able to read no matter what they do as they age, okay? And it's hard to get them to understand. So talk about this part of it then, Kristen, okay? EdTech, which I know you are good at using, and you're using the Discovery products, okay? But how are you using them? Okay, and by the way, I have it linked here where it says Discovery Ed, everybody, but it's over at immersive.discoveryeducation.com. Okay, what are you using to get them excited again about reading the written word? And, man, that is a hard job these days.
Well, I think you have to start off I start off every year with the right novel before I pull in the ed tech because – they really have to develop a love for the story and a love for holding the book. And I always start with A Dog's Life, an autobiography of a stray, because it's not a movie. It's really hard to find on YouTube. Like if you want to just like go on, it's a book that you pretty much have to hold the book and read the book to find out what's going to happen. And they are terrible with suspense because, they're so used to like Googling everything and finding out like instant gratification. It's perfect, like they can't really find out what's going to happen. It's chapter by chapter, and it really pulls them in that suspense. And once they start to realize, hey, this story is great, it's awesome, it's got highs, it's got lows, and for the boys, you definitely too, you need that suspense, and you need to speak, their language. So, but I will say, as far as like ed tech, once I've built that curiosity and tried to feed that that fire, my journey with ed tech started. Well, I've always been a very technology oriented person. I love technology.
No, you have a math mind. You have a math mind.
Yes, I
Yep.
do. I definitely think it has a place, but it is not the only thing happening in my classroom. So just put that out there. For me, my path got started was after COVID. Reading and literacy, as hard as we all tried, it's hard to teach reading over a computer. So when they started coming back to school, we pretty much, the school system gave a lot of autonomy to the schools, find some things that'll work. All your populations are different. I spoke to the two different schools that I taught in, within the same county. So we're not a Title I school, so we only had the basics. We had, the M class, which is like your state assessments, some iReady assessments, but we didn't really have a whole lot of technology to help teach specific parts of reading. So after that first EOG, which is our end-of-year test, that first year, I had taught harder that year than I think I've ever taught. My kids, I saw them grow. The critical thinking was there. They were, they were holding very insightful, like book talk stuff. And I was just so pumped that year. And I said, this is it. They're going to show so much growth. They're going to show, what they have done. And we took that EOG the first year post-COVID, and I felt so defeated because my kids just they got exhausted after one or two selections. They had no stamina. They had absolutely no reading stamina. Because a lot of them were not. When you say
exhausted, do you mean like mentally exhausted?
That they mentally exhausted. Yes.
They had no reading stamina. What a great quote. Okay, I never heard that quote before. That's a great phrase. I never heard that phrase. Reading stamina. That's a great phrase.
Yes, and a lot of it boiled down to like the fluency in which they were reading. If I'd say I'm sure different people have different thoughts, but I always like them to be somewhere around 115, 120 words per minute when they're reading on their level.
Mm-hmm.
I had kids that were reading like 53 words per minute. So they're reading so slowly, it's just wearing them down trying to read these long passages. Yes, the shorter passages, yeah, they could read them. It would take them twice as long as everybody else, but so they could read those passages when they had, one to do, and they could think critically about it, and they could do all the things that they needed to do. But when you're throwing 6 passages at them that are all that length, they just did not have the stamina. I'm sorry, I talk kind of fast, and I say crazy things all the time. My kids get a really good cackle out of that.
I like the word. Go ahead.
Yes. So there's another quote for you, stamina, too. Anyway,
I have a question. I have a question. The parents, okay, I know it's a couple of years ago now, COVID, okay, but parents, and I know you said you got a great PTA, you got a nice school there, okay, so but we're just using these parents as an example, okay, but were the parents showing concern after COVID and now a year or so after that the kids were having trouble reading? Was there a parental concern, or was it just a school concern? Okay, I'm curious because what happened, it's your kids, your fourth graders, going to be like the reading king of Winston-Salem, okay? But all the other kids, are there books in the house? Did they go and access them? Okay, how do the parents think about all this? When they saw that their kids are not reading well, I'm sure the parents are upset. They want kids to be able to read, for goodness sakes. Read and write and arithmetic. You got 2 of those, by the way. You're reading and arithmetic.
On it. Yeah. Your words are as created as my stamina. So yes, I do believe that there was a lot of concern. Definitely more so in like your K2 grades, where the learning of like decoding the words and reading the words.
Sure.
That was definitely a lot more obvious. And we did everything we could as a school. We took all the books out of our book room and we bagged them up and sent books home with every student. But ultimately you cannot replace that contact of the classroom and the environment and the one-on-one, the instruction. So yes, there were definite concerns. Some of the things that I witnessed firsthand, after that first end of grade test was I knew that they were going to probably wear out, but I did not realize how bad, like, the reading stamina was. And you got to think, too, even, I read with my kids as much as I can, but even parents who are reading with their kids every night, we're reading for, like, 20 minutes. They're not, there's no pressure on them to perform anything with that reading, so it's just a different type of reading. I definitely think our parents were pushing reading and reading with their kids at home, and teachers were doing everything they could. It's just,
of course, I agree with you. I'm sure they were.
When you right, and when you talk about fluency, like with the students, that's probably the one thing you're really talking about. Not just fluency, but that silent reading stamina, like how long they're able to read quietly to themselves, without losing attention or focus, which computers made attention so much worse because, we were constantly clicking from one thing to another thing. So, we're talking about stamina and fluency. How quickly can you read? But also, how can I hold myself accountable as a 9 or 10-year-old child and do those things like independently? Because that's hard for an adult to do. You think about us sitting down somewhere in a meeting and trying to read something. It's hard for an adult to hold themselves accountable and stay focused on what they're supposed to do.
You're darn right.
So after kind of I realized I'm very I'm trying to be very proactive. I try to diagnose things and figure out specific problems and be intentional about things that I choose to fix the problems. But I was honestly kind of like, I have no idea. How do I increase stamina? How do I increase silent reading fluency? I can't stand behind a ball and keep them looking at the book and I can't get inside their head and hear that they're reading. So it was kind of something I was really struggling with. And a lot of the research I did was have SSR, have self-selected reading time in your classroom and let kids just take 30 minutes and read. And I get that, and I've tried that in my classroom for years. But what's the one thing a struggling reader is reluctant to do? Read by themselves. Like they're going to, I was guilty of that when I was little. During SSR, the book could have been upside down, but I was going to make it look like I was reading that book, and staying just as focused as I could be. So I really needed to find a way to hold them accountable, which brought me to Dreambox owns it now, but I came across a program called Reading Plus. Mm-hmm. That was that first year, and I liked what I saw. I kind of looked at some of the videos and things like that, just in general to get an idea of what it was. And basically it's ed tech, it's technology, but it actually teaches that fluency and that stamina component that I myself cannot physically crawl inside them and, hold them accountable for doing.
But somehow, this is interesting. Somehow, ed tech. We're in a different age. Okay. Somehow, the way you're saying it and the way I'm hearing it, somehow ed tech is able to do that, and it's able to do that without them knowing it. It's like a little secret,
So,
And
basically,
get into that. You saw the difference.
And I'm going to pull in just a little bit from, one of the things that North Carolina did, post-COVID too, was they really pushed the letters, the Science for Reading training. All elementary school teachers had to be trained in the science of reading. And let me tell you, I was not super excited about that. That's a whole lot of work. But basically for me, it basically made me aware of the things, or solidified the things that I was doing correct, and helped me to understand the things that I needed to work on. And one of those things is kind of definitely, it's the fluency, it's the stamina, that's all part of it, the automaticity of the words and the reading. So this program, Reading Plus, it's been around for years and years. I had never heard of it before. My principal, Lee Cook, here at Vienna, had never heard of it before. But basically, they did research. They tracked the eye movement of children when they were reading.
There you go.
To kind of see what was happening when they were reading independently. And what they found was they were able to measure, the speed at which the students were reading, and kind of look at, how quickly they were able to read the text. But it also, one of the things that it drew attention to was kids do a whole lot of jumping around. They may read a sentence and then they drop back to the beginning of that sentence and start over, and then they keep, they do self-correcting, and they do that so much that they're self-correcting themselves that they're eventually going to lose the meaning of what they're reading.
Mm-hmm. They lose
Does that make sense?
It certainly does. It certainly does.
So,
to me, it's amazing, and it's interesting. I have to say this, and I always love to say this. You talk about, quote, the science of reading. And, of course, if we study how people learn, okay, that's neuroscience, okay? And I have on my college ring from my degree in education a BS in science, Bachelor of Science. But science had nothing to do with it, okay? And when I was teaching 12 million years ago, science had literally nothing to do with it. I was a history teacher, but the science of learning, the science of reading, the sciences of this had nothing to do with it, all right? But you just talked about a study, a scientific study, basically a neuroscience learning study, okay, that told people how people are reading. And to me, we have to, as we train teachers for the future, have them understand the science behind learning, the science, although it's become a catchphrase, the science behind reading, okay? And when you saw that, it made a difference to you. It's hard to get used to something new, but there you are. That's my speech for today. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. It was eye-opening for me. And, fluency had always been a part of what I taught, but this took it to a whole other level. So, the program
we need to go
differentiates.
To another level. Yep.
The program differentiates two ways. So it's not just good. I personally have several sections of reading. I teach the North Carolina transition 4th grade class. Those are the kids that in 3rd grade weren't able to meet the proficiency for third grade reading. That's a gateway year. So they all come to me.
As it is everywhere. Yep.
Yep, they come to me in fourth grade, and I throw everything I have at them to try and, fill in that gap. And I have been, since I've started using this program, and I can talk a little bit more about the program, but we've made huge leaps. So the program differentiates two ways, and the first way is that students are given a difficulty level of the passage on their level, and the levels range from beginning of first grade all the way to 12th grade. So our journey has been very unique in that we started this. I took this idea to my principal, and I was like, hey, look at this program. It's so cool. It differentiates two ways. We've got the different levels of the passages on here, but it also differentiates the rate at which the children are reading. So the screen is pretty much blurred out. Well, they get to choose what they're reading, and choice is key right there, especially once you get that buy-in with these boys. And, there's a section in there about sports, and that's where they all go first, and they read about athletes and things like that.
Yep.
But then it gives them an insight assessment, and it measures what level they need to be on, so basically a grade level equivalency. So as long as a child's reading on a beginning of first grade level, they can use this program. And it also differentiates the screen when they choose their selection is pretty much blurred out, but there's this little box that moves from left to right across the screen. And it's kind of like your car, right? Every child has a speed limit. That's what I call it in my room, and it's the rate at which they're reading.
I like it. Yeah.
So you can stand in the back of my room while they're all using the program, and you're going to see passages on an 8th grade level and passages on a 2nd grade level. You can see the little white boxes. They show so many words at a time so that the child has to be reading while that box is moving. They can't be looking at the ceiling or looking at the floor, because if they're not paying attention while that box is moving, they lose that text, because once that box is no longer on that text, they can't see it anymore. So they have. Does that kind of make sense the way that
it does? It does. And I have an interesting question for you. You get kids. These kids are fourth graders, but some of them are reading on a 2nd grade level, if I may, or a 3rd grade level. Some of them are having proficiency problems. Okay, and I'm curious, using all the ed tech out there, okay, now they can choose what they want to read, but how do you move them up? How do you move them to get to a 4th grade level in 4th grade, or whatever that goal might be? But how does it allow you to do that, to move them up? Okay, not just the level they want, but the level you want them to be reading at. How do you get that to happen?
Part of the problem is what I said earlier. Most of the kids that come into my room, they can read a text on a 4th grade level, but it's going to be very slow. It might be very broken.
Got it.
And because it's slow and it's broken, it interferes with comprehension. It's just there's too much work going on in their brain at one time for them to put all the pieces together. But I'm still teaching my class, and I have all the components of my reading instruction. We still break into small groups. We still work on the things they need to work on. I'm still exposing them to 4th grade level text and 4th grade level skills, but this program starts on their level. They're choosing something they want to read.
Amazing.
And the cool thing about the program is if they're reading on a 1st grade level, it's going to give them 1 page of text and then some questions, 1 page of text and then some questions. So after they get so many, 80% or above on one level, it's going to automatically either
move them up.
It's going to make their box move faster. It's going to gradually start moving their box faster.
It's going to give them a different set of choices.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to give them a different set of an upgrade of choices. Okay.
Yep. So we're starting them at their level. Right. We're starting them on their level fluently and stamina-wise, because the further you go in the program also, the more pages you get between questions. So you're having to retain more of the story. So you're building that stamina also. So you might have 4 pages of text and then a set of questions. So, this is just that in addition to piece that really fit my puzzle. Like, how do I get that silent, sustained reading? How do I get them to work on reading fluently, staying focused on what they're reading, building that stamina and holding them accountable, because those questions hold them accountable.
I have to say something else, because I have to say I I taught what was then called junior high. Now it's middle school. Okay? And we just assumed, this is way back, we just assumed that the kids could read when they came to us. A lot of them, as a matter of fact, probably couldn't. Okay? But I'm curious, the work you're doing now, I want to give you a lot of credit here. The work you're doing now pays off for these kids. Okay? All through school. And I want to hear, you're a fourth grade reading teacher. What are you hearing from the fifth grade teachers? Okay, are they seeing an improvement? The sixth grade teachers, what are you hearing from them? Because they must have been the ones who said, "Wait a minute, we got to get these kids to a better level." Okay, they're the ones who inherit your kids, all your work. Talk to me about that next group of teachers. They inherit all the great work you do.
You know, it's interesting you say that because every set of kids that comes to you is so different, and I'm not really sure why, but you know, every year. There's just something different or unique about every group of kids.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, honestly, they have no idea where they were when they came to me. You know, they may or may not know exactly the kind of work that went on in my room, or you know, that a child grew 2 grade levels in my class. They just know where they're starting. You know, when they come to them. So that's an interesting thing. You know, I haven't. We have, since I started this program 3 years ago in my one classroom, you know, the county has picked this up in more classrooms, and currently our school is using it in all. It was really awesome to see the way that I was able to work with central office and get a lot of this started last year. But
congratulations.
Well, thank you. But our fifth grade teachers this year have now been using the program. They started about middle of the year last year. We also have the unique ability. We keep our AG, our gifted students, in-house here. We have, you know, a block of students that are working above grade level. So those children are getting to use it this year, and it's really cool for those teachers, and those fifth grade teachers have gotten excited because now we have a program that will reach 12th grade. I mean, if you have a kid that's reading, you know, and I mean, and it's content that is on their level, but it's appropriate for a fifth grader. So because that's the other thing, right, is I might be in fifth grade reading on a 10th grade level, but how many 10th grade level texts are really appropriate for a fifth grader to be reading? So, you know, it's been interesting. It's been interesting to have. It's been interesting to have conversations with the fifth grade teachers this year and the things that they're seeing, and they agree that, you know, we're finally holding kids accountable for reading. And
Hear.
You know, I haven't talked to any of the sixth grade teachers. I would be interested. You just gave me something to kind of. Yeah, I plan to.
Talk to them.
That's a good question.
You started this. I mean, you're laying the foundation. Okay, for all that's going to happen in between. These kids don't read; they're not going to do well. Okay, and look what you're doing for them, and look how happy you make the teachers. They feel better. Everybody feels better when the kids can read and do better. Okay, it's just that simple, you know. I got to tell you. So we got to go, Kristen. You're a delightful person. I got to tell you, and I want you to do me a favor to pronounce the name of your school. Pronounce the name of your school.
It's Vienna Elementary.
And you know, when I look at that same word, when you said it earlier, I was thinking exactly right. Okay, you say Vienna, I say Vienna. I love that.
It's definitely a local thing, I think.
It might be local, but it's still pretty cool. I'll tell you a funny story. In Massachusetts, there's a town, Quincy, like John Quincy Adams. Okay, Quincy. But if you're from Massachusetts, you pronounce that Quincy with a Z sound. Quincy. Okay, and that's the standing joke up in New England. If you pronounce Quincy, Massachusetts, as Quincy with a C sound, we know you're not from around here. Hence Vienna. I won't make that mistake when I'm down there. I promise you. Okay.
Just like my alma mater, Appalachian State University. They're not the Appalachian Mountains.
Thank you very much.
The Appalachian Mountains.
Yeah, that's a great school. And I learned that doing a podcast talking to them. They kept saying Appalachian, and I say, Why do I say Appalachian? And they told me nicely, you're pronouncing it wrong. Okay. Great stuff. Okay, it's a great school, by the way. That's a terrific school. Okay, nice people down there.
It is.
Okay, Kristen, thank you. Okay, this was just great. I really appreciate, and I know the audience does too. Just amazing insights. Okay, you're a good teacher.
Absolutely.
Okay,
thank you so much.
Have a good holiday.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Everybody, Christian Trivet, I'm going to get this right, from Vienna Elementary School, Winston-Salem, near Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, North Carolina. Thank you, Discovery Education. I got it linked here about all the great stuff you do in immersive education. And immersive reading, immersive education. We're going to archive the show over at ace-ed.org. I'm Larry Jacobs. This is Pre-K-12 Education Talk Radio. Thanks for listening.
If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.